Welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. I am David Carr, your host of Steward Your Business, helping to bring teams together to accomplish great things. I have an amazing new guest this week, Susie Taylor, who I've gotten to meet and connect with another great networking group called Success Champions Network. Susie is going to bring a wealth of knowledge and experience in branding and getting your story out there, which we haven't talked about too much on the podcast. So I'm super excited to have Susie here. Welcome to the Business Roundtable Podcast, Susie.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. Susie, when you and I met, one of the things that drew me to you was, we were in a group and you were talking about like how business owners struggle to get their story out there, and especially, just starting out businesses, they kind of try to be everything to everybody. And so if you will back up a little bit to where Susie Taylor Marketing came, but like tell us about your story, your journey, what brought you to starting Susie Taylor Marketing, and then we're going to get into kind of solving the problems and the challenges that you solve.
Okay. Well, I started out my professional life as a newspaper reporter. So I have been telling other people's stories for about 40 years now. And about 4 years ago, I decided to open my own business. So I created an LLC and started to try to tell business owners stories. And it wasn't until I came in contact with Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand, which is a book that was released in 2017, that I kind of really figured out what it is that I want to do. And I really want to help business owners figure out what their story is and then how their story supports their customers. Because your customers don't really care that you've been in business for 40 years until they figure out why. Why did you do this? Why did you start this business that you love so much? And then that's when it hits them. Wow, this person really gets me. This person really understands where I'm coming from, and I can trust this person. And I think stories are just so important, so important. It's how we make sense of the world. It's the stories that we tell ourselves.
Right. Well, I think it's important people hear this, Susie, because, like you said, you have this experience writing stories, working for newspapers and right before we started recording this, I was saying that there's some people that struggle. They're not the creative type. They're not the story writers, right? We all have stories, but it's another thing to take that and put it in a story and a narrative that makes sense, that somebody actually wants to consume. Because sometimes when I get sucked into a movie or reading something, and because it's well written, it's well crafted, right, Susie?
Right. Well, why do you get sucked in? You sucked in because there is a hero there who needs some support from someone who happens to step in and doesn't save the day, but helps the hero save the day. And that's what our jobs are as business owners, is we don't step in to save the day for our customers. We show them how they save it themselves. So they become the hero of their own story. You think about your story. You don't want someone else to jump in and be the savior. You want to be the one who steps up and out, but sometimes you need a little help, a little support. And that's what we do as business owners, is we guide our customers so that they can figure out the solution to a problem that they have. A lot of times it's just figuring out the why. I remember talking to someone who's a liaison between families and a nursing home. And I kept asking her, why this? Well, families deserve to know what's happening with and she just kept going around and around and around. And I finally was like, did you have experience with this? Oh yeah. My parents were in a nursing home, and I just hated not being able to know what was going on. That is what your customers need to know. That they need to know that you've experienced this, that you've been where they are, that you can help them, you can support them. And you're not just speaking from, a technical aspect. You've actually lived through this, and you know what this is like. And I can trust you because you know that.
Yeah. You as you were saying that, Susie, what I think was what it came for me is we devalue our stories, our background, because maybe we know it so well. We, and what I just heard you do, this is a beautiful thing. You just pulled this story out of this woman. It was all there, and you created this whole, put it all together. And not everybody has
Mhm.
that gift, and sometimes we're just unconscious, we're unaware of it, and so, you know, maybe can you speak? I just that was really powerful for those of you who are listening. I just want to hear Susie just did an amazing job of doing that, and not everybody can do that, and we are just unaware, and it's difficult to sometimes articulate it or put that together, right, Susie?
Right, right. I call it going 7 layers deep, and it's
Mm,
asking that why question over and over and over again. And the
mhm,
first few times when you try to answer why, it's a pat answer. It's the answer that you've always given. And then about the 5th or 6th time, it suddenly hits you that, "Oh, that's why. That's why I do this. That's why I do
mhm,
this." For me, I spent 30 years as the mom of a child with severe disabilities. He passed away about 4 years ago, and it's just been within the last few years that I figured out that I wanna take care of my clients.
mm,
I the same way I took care of my son. I wanna
yeah,
make sure that they're heard. I wanna make sure that they are confident in their decisions, that they understand what's going on with their marketing. Sometimes it can be so overwhelming to think about, I have to have a website, and I have to have a lead magnet, and I've got to do
mhm,
social media, and I've got to do email. And why? Why do I have to do all those things? Well, I, I want to lead my clients and guide my clients so that
mhm,
we take one thing at a time and
yep,
say, all right, let's look at your website. Let's figure out what your message is. What
yeah,
is it that you want your customers to know that's going to draw them in and have them look to you as their guide, their person who's going to help them solve the problems that they have? And we
mhm,
just take it one step at a time. That's
mhm.
the only thing you can do is just one step at a time.
Well, I agree, and I love this approach that you're talking about, the 7 layers, asking the whys, Susie, because I was just talking to a gentleman yesterday, and I think people go through like, "Well, I'm gonna go get my S corp or LLC or go do these technical things," like, and it's not bad, but they're not clear on their story and, like, who they really wanna serve. And I think investing in that first, personally, based on my experience, Susie, is going to be more beneficial than you going doing a lot of technical things. I got my email, I got my domain, I got doing all these technical things, and they're not bad. But if you think about like, what is the story? What fuels you? What gets you up doing what you do every day? Right?
Mhm.
And it's kind of
Yeah,
counterintuitive, but I feel like if you invested the time and the energy, what you said, Susie, then you're like, okay, well, it makes sense for me than to do these other things. So we kinda get things a little
right.
backwards, huh?
Right. I think a lot of times we forget who it is we're trying to reach. We have this widget or this service or this thing that we want to provide to the world, but we're
Mhm,
not exactly sure who we're supplying it to. And
mhm,
a lot of people will say, well, my product is for everyone. Well, no, it's not. If you're talking to everyone, you're basically talking to no one. And
mhm,
you've got to figure
mhm,
out who it is that you're talking to. I used to write a blog, and I wrote it to my mom. I figured if my mom could follow along and understand the feelings that I was trying to express, then pretty much any other woman of her age would probably follow along as well, and so would
mhm,
other people. But as long as my mom got it, that's the only thing that really mattered. Um,
mhm,
and you just got to figure out who it is you're talking to and what it is you want them to hear, not
mhm,
necessarily what you say, but what you want them to hear from you, because what we say isn't what makes the difference. It's what people hear that makes the
mm.
difference to them. And a lot of times we think we're saying one thing and our customers are hearing something totally different. So,
Totally
yeah.
different. I
Yeah.
coach teams on this too, Susie. On like, in fact, I have a whole other book here. It's called the Communication Code, but it's like idea of what's communicated versus what's received and interpreted, right? And it
Mhm.
happens in your business. It happens within your organization and your people. I was actually just talking to a client, to Susie, about this today because there's a new employees that have come into the company and they don't know the history of the company and what got them, how they get there. They just look at the company like, "Oh, you're successful." Like, well, no, there's a whole story. I understand there in a level of appreciation, but it takes time and, like you said, intentionality to craft that story. And the words that might be meaningful to me may not be the same words. And I've learned having somebody like you, Susie, come and looking at that and saying, "Does this really resonate with the person that you're trying to reach?" Um, because I agree, I fall into that trap of trying to say it to everybody, and it doesn't ring true to anybody, and nobody is
Right.
and you're frustrated, right? Why is my messaging not getting the response? And
Right.
if we
I
use
think
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we forget too that our audience isn't just our customers. If we have a business, our audience is also our employees.
Mhm,
And if they don't understand what the business is there for, they can't they can't serve your customers the way that you would want them to. So a
mhm,
lot of times you just need to figure out how to talk to your employees too so that they understand what the focus of the business is and what's important to the not what's important to them as employees, but what's important to the business and
mhm,
to the community that is the business.
mhm.
So, and we just have to think about all of our audiences, not just the ones that are paying us. So,
Yeah, no, that's so true because I mean, I definitely having worked at a company and not have and seeing the disconnect when people aren't able to share the story clearly or understand or articulate it versus those that are very clear and understand. And I find that, they're much more loyal and engaged when they understand the story, they understand the background, and they
mhm,
want to share that with others, right? Because it's engaging, it's meaningful. Um, I worked with a woman, my previous company, I was on the pod I just recorded an episode with her. Company was called Bargus, but she built the company based on her relationship with her grandfather, and there's a whole background story there. And I took that. I wasn't my story, wasn't my experience, but I appreciated what she brought and how she shared that with the team and why she created the company and what she was trying to do. And it was something that I carried forward with me and my thoughts, and I would be able to share that story and what was the genesis of that company, especially when it's particularly when it's small, making sure that everybody's aware of that, understands that. But yeah, I think I wish it would say is maybe the asking of the why, Susie, what you're getting at is it seems easier than it should, but it does take a fair bit of work to get at, like you said, because sometimes I go through and like getting through those layers, Susie, to talk a little bit about like, you know, just the mindset or understanding of getting there and helping articulate that. How are you, what's walk through that step a little bit more process so people understand like what should they be thinking of like when they work with you, Susie, like what's that process to start to peel the layers away, to get at that
well,
story.
uh, a lot of times we think this is my business. I've got to be professional. I have to be
Mhm,
my reason for this has got to be, financial or whatever. And I think a lot of times we've got to remind ourselves that we're human beings. We do
mhm.
things because of specific feelings and because of the way that we were brought up or whatever.
Mhm,
And so the whole process of asking why sometimes you've just got to let yourself get vulnerable a little bit.
mm, mhm,
um, I
mhm,
know, uh, when I think about how I want to treat my clients, I remember that everyone has a purpose. There's a reason why they are here interacting with me at whatever moment it is that they're doing that. And,
mhm,
learn that from my son, my kids,
mm,
because all three of them are totally different young men, but they all came from the same gene pool, all
Yeah.
totally different people, and they
Yeah.
each have their own specific purpose here. And
Mm-hmm.
our businesses are the same. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're selling widgets or you're selling a service, or that doesn't matter. The fact that you are here on this earth trying to support someone else
Mm-hmm.
as they go through their lives, that's a very valid purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once we get vulnerable for ourselves and accept that there's a little deeper reason here why I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, I use the example of a landscape architect. A lot of times
Uh-huh.
they think, oh, I'm selling bushes and
Uh-huh.
shrubs. No, that's not what you're selling. You're
Mm.
selling the feeling that someone gets when they pull up to their house and they
Yes.
see how beautiful it is. You're
Yes.
selling beauty. You're selling something totally different than just shrubs and hardscapes.
Yes.
And once we realize that what we're selling isn't really the product so much as it is the way that our clients and customers use that product or service,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I think we can start to get really vulnerable and understand why we do what we do and why
Oh
it's important
man.
to us.
You're bringing to mind, I think we might have talked about this outside of the podcast, the book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek, but
Yes.
he talks about that people
Yes.
don't buy, they buy why you do what you do, right, Susie? That's what you're getting at. That's what I'm hearing. So we're focused
Right.
on, well,
Right.
I'm doing this service, and I you know, as a I don't know any business owner that if they're quote unquote getting into business to make just money, that's not gonna survive. They're not gonna maintain. If it's just to get money, it's not gonna survive. Now you may make money, but I'm just saying over the long haul, are you gonna be sustainable?
Yeah.
I see this a lot. Like, let's just say a real estate agent. I want to become a real estate agent because I want to make money. I want to sell houses. But what's like to your point? That's not really what you're doing, right? You're creating a space for people to make a home, a space. It's a totally different mindset. I think what you're getting at, what I'm hearing you say is like,
Right.
have you developed that mindset? And for me, even the word selling has been a barrier to me of like, I'm not selling. Yes, I'm technically selling, but I'm giving an opportunity for people to invest in themselves. I'm helping them. I almost say replacing the word selling. I'm helping them in this way, or providing, or guiding, or whatever the word is, but for where your journey is. But I think these are storytelling words. These are words that describe an experience, right? But this is not
Right.
easy.
Well,
This is not, at least for me, it hasn't been easy to
and it,
articulate.
it, it goes back to caveman days. I mean,
Yeah.
how did we make sense of the world around us? We
Mhm.
made stories, made up stories.
Yes.
And our brains are designed to do two things: keep us safe and to help us thrive.
Mhm.
That's it. And
Mhm.
if your business doesn't keep them safe or help them thrive, it doesn't appeal to someone.
Mhm.
And so selling isn't really, the fact that you don't want to be a salesperson means you're a pretty
Mhm.
good person. It means you want to help people, you want to support people, you don't want to take advantage of them. And
Right.
that's one of the things that I struggled with at first, but I've come to realize that being a copywriter isn't trying to, or a branding person isn't trying to talk someone into buying something that they don't need. I'm
Mhm.
trying to let people know the service or the product that my clients offer that's going to make their lives better and help them be safe and help them thrive. And
Right.
that's what sales is all about. Sales is
Mhm.
service.
Mhm.
Sales is service.
Yeah, I love that. That's and the being in the and people remember stories. They don't remember all the technical jargon, right? They remember, how did it make me feel? Did it resonate? If it resonates, that's probably pull you in. If it doesn't resonate, that's okay too, right? Because that means that's just not for me.
Right. Right. And I think one of the things as business owners, we get so caught up on the features of our products that
Yes.
we forget the benefits. And people don't buy our features, they buy the benefits. So someone isn't going to go buy a truck with a Hemi engine and I don't know anything about engines, but a 350 liter, the features aren't what matters. What matters is this truck going to be able to pull my camper across the Rocky Mountains?
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Mm-hmm.
benefit. I want to go
Right.
from here to California. Is this truck going to be able to pull my camper as I go west across the country? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I need to know. That's what I
Right.
need to know.
Do
Yeah,
Susie, I would love to, we like to think, I think we like to think we're more logical than we actually are. And we are emotional first, and then we bring logic behind to justify our emotional decisions, right? We buy on emotions. Like, I
exactly.
don't need whatever I have, almost anything, right? There's some emotion in there. So can you talk a little bit about how you infuse emotion and that energy into the story?
Well, there are certain things that are going to catch people's attention,
Mhm,
and if they can relate to it, then it's going to resonate with them.
mhm,
So, I mean, it's not a story that I like start off with, but I resonate with some people. I resonate with moms,
mhm,
particularly moms of kids with disabilities,
mhm.
because I raised a child with multiple
Yes.
disabilities. And to know how I viewed his life
Mm,
and how he was such a huge teacher for me,
mhm, mhm,
um, that was for me, that is my story. That is
mm,
my story. That's what I think appeals to other people is that I've experienced this lifetime with a young man who passed away at 28.
mm,
I was the one who primarily took care of him. I was the one who changed his diapers, and I was the one who gave him tube feedings, and I was the one who took him
mhm,
to the doctors.
mm,
But once he was gone, I really had to realize that my worth wasn't all caught up in what I was doing for him in
mm.
particular. My worth
Yes.
is caught up into the fact that I valued his life, and
Mhm,
I value my clients. I value
mhm,
what they're
mhm,
out there trying to do and trying to offer to their customers, their clients. And I think I think making sure that people are seen and heard are two of the most important things that we can do for our clients, is
mhm,
to make them feel seen and heard
mm,
and
mhm,
understood. And, I think that means we've gotta get a little bit vulnerable.
mhm.
We've gotta be a little bit more than just the owner. We've got to be the person there who wants to build the relationship, because that's
Yes.
what this is all about, is building
Yes.
relationships and having connections with people. That to me, that's the connection that I have with you, David. I
Mhm,
mean,
mhm. Yes.
that is what matters to me, is
Mhm.
the connection that we have.
Yes.
And if something comes of that, wonderful. If not, I'm a better person for
Yes.
having met you,
Amen.
getting to know you, and that's important to me. That's important to me.
100%, Susie. It's so beautifully said. I'm always of, yeah, building the relationship. I agree with you 100%. And we can build relationships. Just your sharing your story and your journey builds that connection and appreciation. I've never had that experience of having a disabled child, and not only that, to have one pass away, and all of that goes along. There's so much there, Susie, and it shows the richness and the dynamic of who you are as a person, and your resolve to serve others and care, and you're not defined by one of these things. This is part of your story. This is part of your fabric, and I think
Yeah.
it's so important
Yeah.
for people to get. I do agree with you. It is in this world, I think. more than ever, we do value authentic being transparent, because there's a lot of fake stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff. It's like, how do I know you're the real deal? You know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and right? And
And
this,
that's
I mean,
hard. People
yeah, right?
yeah. People don't know. People don't know that you're the real deal until
Yep.
you show them and demonstrate. And the way to do that is to build a relationship with them and have them learn to trust you and believe in you. Um,
Mhm.
you've got to get people curious about what it is that you offer. You have to enlighten them as to what it is that you do to help them, and then they can
Mhm.
make a commitment to you after. But it's after they get to know who you are and learn about you and trust you. That's when they make a commitment to you.
And that takes time,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't happen like boom. I mean, we're in this transactional world where we want people just to boom, take action, and it just doesn't happen. The
Yeah.
reason why I even created the Business Roundtable podcast is because I wanted to create a space for others to experience folks like you, Susie, taking this in and like, oh, is this a person for me? Oh, wait, the way that she's speaking, and it's an opportunity to, you know, get to know each other and share. And I love this format of the podcast because it's what I call a give before you get model of looking and sharing and putting value out in the world and saying, look, here's somebody else
Mhm.
that's come on the podcast. They Susie, we're so glad to have you here, showing and caring. And you're like, this is a person I want to work with. This is a person I feel like I know that she's bringing value. I know that she cares. And what's that saying? You know, people are more concerned about how you care and how they feel, you know, for them versus kind of these other
Yeah.
things. If you don't care,
People
right?
don't care how much they know until they know how much you care. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
it. Right? And so getting that out there, but it's more to the point, you know, I know that there's business owners that care, but they're not that why where somebody like you come in, Susie, is and why I wanted to have you on the podcast is that you may be stuck in this area of trying to craft a story. Now you could try to do it alone, but having somebody like yourself, Susie, that can help draw this out from you and provide a path to go away much more quickly than just trying it on your own, or just
Right.
even
Right.
watching a video or buying a book. Those are not bad things, but when you have somebody like yourself, Susie, as a coach or guidance, you can go so much faster, right?
I I I sure, I believe that.
Yeah.
One of my big goals is to empower business owners so
Mhm.
that they feel confident in making the decisions that they need to make to promote their businesses. And if
Yes.
that means using me, then fine. If it doesn't, if I can give someone the tips or the ideas on so that they can feel confident, that's what my role is. That's what my job
Mhm.
is.
Mhm.
And I so many people feel like that. I've heard so many stories of people who, I paid so and so $10,000 to build my website and it looks like crap and I don't understand it. And then they ran off with it. You know, I, I just want business owners to know what they're hiring people to do, know what they can expect once they hire someone to do something, and then feel empowered and confident to move forward and make good decisions. Um, and if that means using me, fine. If not, that's fine too. But
Mhm.
my ultimate goal is just to help business owners feel empowered and confident in the decisions that they're making to market their business.
Oh man, Susie, this is gold you're dropping, and I think I so appreciate you. We're getting close to the end of the podcast here, but you know, I hope as you guys are listening to this or catching us on YouTube, wherever the case, whatever the platform it might be, is you're realizing what the Business Roundtable is about. It's creating this space for folks like Susie to come share and know that you've got an advocate here for you in your business. In the case of Susie, it is getting your branding, it's your messaging, it's your copywriting down. Yes, there's tools out there, but I think having a conversation, and Susie, we'll make sure we share all of your information in our show notes, links and all that stuff. Any other
Thanks.
resources you want to share, happy to put them in there. And Susie and I are connected on LinkedIn and our Success Champions Network. So there's lots of ways that you can get a hold of us. But Susie, as we're wrapping it up here, if there's a kind of a key takeaway or a part of our conversation that you would just want the listener to take a story, a moment of that to take away with them, what would that be as we're wrapping up here?
I think a key takeaway is don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid to show yourself to the people you serve. You will have so much of an impact on them when they feel like they know you a little bit better and they know where you're coming from. Um, Allow yourself to feel the feels, to be
Mm,
vulnerable, and to allow yourself to support your people. Um, don't go out there and sell. Go out there and serve. Serve the people
mm.
you serve.
I love
That's it.
that, Susie. I love that, Susie. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's a real pleasure. I love the stories
Oh,
and the warmth that you bring. It's
thank you
really
so
a
much, David.
blessing. Yeah.
I've so enjoyed myself. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Well, everybody come back. We're gonna again, I'll have all the show notes. We of course love you subscribing and leaving us a review, sharing this podcast with others on whatever platform that you enjoy. And we're gonna have more guests. We'll probably have Susie back again because she's been so many great nuggets here. Thank you, Susie, and thank you all for listening on the Business Roundtable podcast. Until next time, take good care, everybody.